Hi, everybody. Hey, it's me, Zach. How are you? How are you doing? Welcome to the last podcast. I know that traditionally, when we've been doing this on the line series, the coronavirus phone interview series, we haven't been doing introductions. We've just been jumping right into the conversation. But, when we started this series, I kind of thought that by now, by October, the pandemic would be over, not ramping up again, having never really dipped that much in the first place. So, we're doing intros now, is what I'm saying. We're doing intros to these episodes, and at the top of today's show, I just wanted to do a little dedication. This episode is dedicated to Dave Magdalinsky, a longtime family friend who recently passed away at the age of, I think, 57 after a long illness. He was married to my mom's former roommate, Trisha, who was an intermittent but frequent presence in my life growing up. As a kid, I didn't really understand the dynamic in her and my mom's friendship, where it seemed like they'd be in each other's lives constantly for a couple of months and then seemingly out of touch for months or years at a time. As an adult, this dynamic makes perfect sense to me, but as a kid, I wondered about it a lot. The idea that my mom was once in college and once had roommates was such an intriguing thought experiment to me at the time. And actually, I guess still is. Anyway, Trish and Dave got together in the late 90s, and I really liked Dave immediately. I remember we talked about the Nintendo 64 a lot. I was frustrated by this one level in Donkey Kong 64, and he was frustrated by the game Perfect Dark, so we traded games. I remember thinking I got the better end of the deal, but of course I was like 12, and it didn't occur to me that if he regretted the trade, he could have just bought the game again. I don't have a lot of particular memories of Dave from that era, just the sort of generalized good feeling you get when you think of someone who was cool to you when you were the most annoying and needy and weird looking that you'd ever be in your life. I remember Trish and Dave came to a college graduation party my mom had for me, and this part's kind of mortifying. Dave was a painter, a very good painter, and as a gift, he had painted me a picture of Marsh Plaza at BU, but I was a commuter student, and I wasn't really very observant in general, and I didn't recognize the painting as a landmark I was supposed to recognize. I briefly thought it was just a frame for my diploma or something. I remember it being awkward, and I felt terrible about it later, although I'm sure that most of it happened in my brain. I hope it did anyway. Dave got sick not long after that, and the last time I saw him was last year at my brother Morgan's wedding. He and Trisha were only there briefly, and I saw them just as Christy and Arlo and I had gotten dressed and we were headed over to get in position for the ceremony. I don't really remember how Dave looked, but I sensed that, he wasn't better. I said hello to them, and I quickly moved on to say hello to my friends who had also just arrived, and I thought I would have a chance to talk to Dave and Trisha at the reception. I was really looking forward to it, in fact, in the way that I am now, where I feel like I've built my life into this thing that I'm proud of, and I want the people who knew me to know it. But I also want to show them how much better I am at asking questions and showing interest to the people that I care about now. I was looking forward to it. But they left right after the ceremony because Dave wasn't feeling well, so I never saw him again. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. This episode's for Dave Magdalinsky.
How's it going?
All right, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's Monday, so that's all right, I guess. So my name is Suzana Mihajlica. I have been a board member for the New Hampshire Theater Project since January of 2020, which very interesting time to join. We did not know what was coming for us in terms of the pandemic. But yeah, got involved with that because of, my friendship with Catherine Stewart. She is the artistic director there. And really just wanting to be a part of this great community organization that I felt and still feel is doing very important work within the Seacoast and now beyond, because we can be beyond the Seacoast thanks to Zoom and a lot of the other digital ways we've had to adapt. Outside of being a board member, I work at HubSpot. I'm a product consultant there. Background is in marketing and communication, so I use that to sort of help our partners and clients grow better.
And you don't know it, although maybe I did tell you this in a meeting one time, but you're kind of like a missing link on this podcast, because there was a night at the New Hampshire Theater Project right before you and I both joined as board members. It was like one of those community conversation evenings. And it was Rick Wallace, Catherine, and Sarah Reitzman speaking, all of whom have been on the podcast. And you and I started talking because I had mentioned something that was happening with the Trump administration and the mayor of Portsmouth. The Trump administration was kind of allowing communities to reframe their approach to refugees while sort of pretending that it was like a new policy they had to opt into. And the city of Portsmouth very intentionally took that bait, and I was complaining about it. And you told me that you were yourself a refugee. Mm-hmm. And unbeknownst to us, while you and I were talking, Najee Brown was sitting behind us. And Najee Brown had been thinking about what he wanted to do in the Seacoast community. And he was so impressed by what people were talking about in the room that he thought, like, essentially he thought, I have underestimated these New England rubes. And I am ready to have I'm ready to have that conversation with them. You know, I think he wasn't sure that he wanted to have the kind of conversations that he felt like he had to have with people while he was in Maine trying to just like cool his heels. Mm-hmm. But he talks about that night at the theater project as...
That's amazing.
Yeah. So what is the story with you coming to the United States? How old were you?
I was 7 or 6 years old. I am not totally sure. And I believe it came in 95 or 96. I feel like I asked my parents when it was and they tell me and then I forget because in my head, I just always confuse those years. But I was very young and this was during the Balkan War over there. So I was born in Bosnia. And then my family, when I was 4 years old, my mom, my brother, and grandma, we moved to Novi Sad in Serbia, which was safer. My dad stayed behind. And then 2 years later, he joined us in Novi Sad. And throughout that whole time, my mother was in the background working to get paperwork and whatever we needed to get refugee status to get to the US. And that all went through either 95 or 96, but it was actually coming right up. It was around October 20th because I remember this was pre-internet, and so we didn't really know what Halloween was. Like, that's not a thing we celebrate over there, and no one really warned us about Halloween. And so we show up, and it just was kind of wild. I'm like, what's up with America? There's just weird decorations everywhere. So that was very confusing, especially after leaving like a war. Scary in a different way. But yeah, so we were placed in Boston, Massachusetts, or in the neighborhood in Somerville, Massachusetts. And yeah, that's how we came here.
Somerville still counts as Boston.
Yeah.
So did you go to school for communications and marketing, or how did you get involved in that?
No, I went to UNH. I graduated with a degree in English literature, which during the recession was useless. And I was living in Boston shortly after I graduated, working at a hotel front desk. And sort of like through a friend that worked there who ended up working in people ops at Arnold, which is an advertising agency in Boston, was able to parlay, the customer service experience from the hotels into a creative assistant role. So working with the creative directors for the different ad accounts that Arnold had. So that was kind of my first foray into advertising besides just Mad Men. And really liked it. Thought it was just like a fun industry. Thought that, there's a lot of good and a lot of challenges in the industry. But ultimately used the experiences there to get a job at Northeastern as an assistant marketing and communications director. Since then, just really kind of gotten into wanting to use marketing as a force for good, like wanting to help share the stories that I think can really help connect the world a little bit more. And so that's kind of how I got into it. It wasn't really training. It was just, I don't know, being like, I can do this, even though I had no experience whatsoever. But hey, that's how you learn anything, is not having experience and then, taking the time to learn. So
I remember when I first took the job that I was in and you said that we should like talk about marketing, I was like intimidated to talk to you about it first, because I was like, oh, she's definitely like she's been in this a long time and I don't know anything about it. But it probably would have been good if we had talked a little bit, just because that would have given me a little more reassurance, because I similarly like backed into the spot, like, and I think I'm sort of motivated by a lot of the same things. Like I was working in a job where I was not really doing a lot of creative work. I was, I had to like be creative in like an everyday sort of way, but I felt like I wasn't really like using my powers for good. I felt like there was more that I could probably do, and be more creative at work, but also just kind of like apply that energy towards something.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like it's interesting because when you say creative in other ways, I've had, oh, is that hard for Arlo?
It's either Arlo or Isaac. I'm not sure which one, but and also that could have either been a good scream or a bad scream.
But yeah, I feel like there's a difference between getting to have a creative outlet of work where you're actually creating something that is tangible, is going to be shared, and is going to be consumed by other people, versus being creative in the sense of like creative problem solving, which is different and sometimes fun in its own way, but not the same thing. Not the like, let's make something that other people will read or watch or look at and have some kind of reaction to it, some kind of emotional reaction. So
tonight we bring you the Chet Baker Quartet, featuring the young West Coast musician who this year took first place in the trumpet department, both the metronome and downbeat magazine polls.
I'm really glad that I ended up doing this for a job. It was definitely scary, like jumping from one job to another in a pandemic while my wife was also starting a new job, like with 2 tiny children. That's kind of why I like vanished from the New Hampshire Theater Project for a couple of months.
Oh, I know, we missed you. Your witticisms and general positive addition to our conversations.
That's harder in Zoom too, though. It's harder to be like the guy who just like does a little aside, because like it takes up more real estate.
Yeah, and then the person, like, it's not a natural, like, when you're in a group of people or on a table, like saying those asides, they're funny, versus on Zoom, like you say something and it just sort of like, people are like, what was that? Or like,
yeah, you freeze mid punchline, and then it does that thing where it catches up and it says it really fast, yeah, it's like, it's really bad. I've struggled to learn what to be like in a Zoom meeting now. Like I used to be good in meetings. I'm good in meetings. Zoom meetings, I don't know that I'm that good in Zoom meetings yet. I feel like that's something that I think we have in common in board meetings. I think that we're both there to be like enthusiastic.
Yeah. Well, because I feel like it's not like we're there to do it. We just are enthusiastic about what's happening. And that's one of the things I found the most challenging about switching to this Zoom format, is that I think enthusiasm in a room is contagious, but it's just much more difficult, like when you aren't necessarily on the screen because you're not talking, you're listening, like people can't really like see or kind of sense that enthusiasm that energy that you're bringing to the meetings. And so, yeah, I don't know about you, but I've just been finding that like, it's sort of like down my energy a bit too, where I'm just like, man, I'm used to being like so much more like with it. And I don't know, I think it's just Zoom. Zoom's tough when you're doing it all day.
And now here is Chet Baker.
Thank you, John.
Business issue of yours. Where I'm
Thank you, John.
So, okay, let's talk about joining the board of a nonprofit in a pandemic that happens to be a board that's centered around live theater. Was joining the New Hampshire Theater Project, is this like your first nonprofit board? It's mine.
Yeah, I had zero board experience prior to that, but knew that I wanted to become more involved in a decision-making capacity in an influential sort of way within the community. Personally, like I've never been a huge theater person. I did some theater in high school, really enjoyed acting, but I wasn't the person going to plays like every weekend. But I knew Catherine, and we had met by doing advocacy work as part of Results, which is an anti-poverty advocacy group. And we just really clicked and loved talking together and working together on things. And so she actually was the one who brought it up with me and said, hey, we're looking to add board members. I'd love it if you would apply because I think you'd be a great addition to this. We need fresh voices. We need people who have different experiences to come and help influence the things we want to be doing in the community. And I was very nervous because, you know, you hear board of directors and you're like, that's a title. That's a big title. But, you know, I met with her, I learned more about it. I met with Jen and Matt and learned just about what they were looking for. I was already pretty familiar with the mission of NHTP because I'd gone to an Elephant in the Room series and just loved that, thought that was so important and good. But yeah, I thought, I mean, the timing, obviously they work on the annual year. So at that time, I wasn't thinking much about, hey, there's a pandemic coming. I wonder how that's going to impact this. But, you know, later in January, February, you're hearing more and more about it. And suddenly in March, you're having these conversations around, well, what does theater in a pandemic look like? And what is the role of the New Hampshire Theater Project, you know, within a community when we're all experiencing this, you know, deep trauma in a way. I think a lot of people had a hard time adjusting or dealing with the uncertainty of things, the scariness of things. I think we still are. It's just become more normalized because we've been going through it for 6-7 months now.
Yeah, we're numb to it now.
I could do anybody if you want. If you want Alan Alda, I could do Alan Alda. Hi, this is Josh Ritter, and you're listening to Day Trotter.
But that's a desire that I think is, you know, what you're talking about, and the reasons that it's still compatible with what the theater is trying to do, right? I think your perspective is helpful because I think I joined the theater. I'm also not really a theater person. I had a friend whose father was a theater director, and I always loved going to see his productions. But I haven't been like involved in theater since 6th grade Annie when I played a police officer. So like a police officer like finds Annie, you know, that was my job. So I had been so involved in like the digital world, like I've been so online for so long, and I really wanted to like get away from that and get more involved in like the creative part of a community. Mm-hmm. And you know, it was one of those like as soon as I get out, they pull me back in situations, right? Like I joined the board of a theater. I'm like, all right, I'm going to be in the like physical creative world now, and none of this digital stuff. Pandemic. Now it's all.
You can't run, Zach.
I can't escape it. You're right. I've embraced my destiny. But yeah, it was definitely. But let's talk about what do you think motivated your desire to kind of get more involved actively in your community? Where did that come from?
Well, I think many different places. I've always liked the feeling of community, and I moved so much as a child and as a young adult that I never really felt like I was part of any one community. I never felt that sense of belonging. And so, you know, moving to Portsmouth, buying a house with my partner, like that to me was like, okay, I'm putting roots down here, and I love this town. I love this community. I love that it's a place that, you know the people who are serving you, and you walk down the street and you recognize city councilors and you say hello to neighbors. And that was the first time that I've really experienced that much of a sense of belonging in a place. And so I just wanted to, become more involved in that and have more of a connection, not just to like the things and activities that are happening in the community, but the people, and also the opportunity to learn, and also an opportunity to, you know, maybe even influence the things that I wanted to see in my community. So yeah, I think that was sort of the biggest motivator, was just that like personal need inside my soul that I just wanted to fill with doing something that I could feel good about and feel a connection to, like the physical like place that I lived in. But beyond that, I would say I also, you know, I've always gravitated towards the arts. I think they're a really powerful vehicle for kids, young adults, to learn how to deal with feelings that they have. And whether that's painting, which is my medium that I've had since I was 7 years old or 8 years old. Shortly after I moved to the US, I started going to this painting school. It was right down the street when I lived in Summerville. That's another story for another podcast. But anyway, I just think art is really important developmentally for kids. And I think art is really important when it comes to communities feeling a sense of belonging to each other. And I think a sense of belonging is, you know, we're such a health-oriented society. Like we constantly, like people are obsessed with exercise, they're obsessed with their diets. They, you know, are always thinking about, you know, ways that we as a society can be healthier. And one of the things that just doesn't get as mentioned, which I think is really tragic, is that sense of belonging that we don't seem to foster, and we don't seem to really like prioritize as much as this sort of independent self-reliance that, sure, also important. You know, I think that's part of being Americans or people in a modern world, but I also think that that belonging, that sense of community, that is just really important to your overall health. And so wanted to kind of get a little bit of that for me and the people in my community.
And how are you feeling right now about like the state of community and that the health of other people's sense of community? Because once again, it's like you're just saying things that I think as you talk right now, which is very it's very great. It's great to have this conversation and to be like, oh yeah, of course we both ended up joining this theater at the same time. We have the same brain. Yeah. But yeah, you're saying very similar things to the way that I feel. And that was another thing that was so rough about this pandemic, was that as my sense of community strengthened and as I got deeper into a community and sort of, I think I sort of found that sense of belonging for the first time that I'd been looking for a long time. And I don't think I didn't know how to look for it. You know, I always thought I had to build it myself. So I started a lot of bands, and like I had, you know, like a TV show that I used to do in high school that I like got all my friends to do. Like I like was trying to create something for us to be inside of, you know, and that I got married and started a family. Like I just needed to like create my own. But I thought that was my only option. And I think just a few years ago, I started to find more of a sense of belonging in groups that existed before me, you know, like something I didn't just start myself. And so as I got into that, I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is a whole new sense of community that I'd never had before. And now I feel so worried for those communities. Like I'm trying to like save everything. I feel very activated by that, but also not totally sure what to do.
Yeah, I'm torn on this one, because on the one hand, I have faith in the resilience of people and of communities. But on the other hand, like we're dealing with a lot right now, and not just within our little community, but if you like look at the greater country, the greater world, like besides the pandemic, all of the racial injustices that are happening, all of the police brutality that we're seeing come to light, there's just a lot of divisiveness right now that, you know, even bringing it back to the community piece, like something to me, and I know people have different ways of interpreting this, but something as simple as wearing a mask when you're going out to make other people in your community feel safe. To me, that just is like the easiest thing you can do. And yet even those things are leading to fights, confrontations, you know, at restaurants where people refuse to follow these rules that establishments have. And that's the part that scares me more, is that there's just this growing divisiveness of us v them within a community, instead of people saying, no, we're one community, we're all trying to get through whatever this is as best as we can. And that's, I don't know, I had hoped that maybe this would push people to be more unified in fighting against something, and I don't know if it's had that effect. Maybe it will in hindsight. I don't know. The year still happening. We are still in the throes of everything that's going on. But yeah, I guess I'm torn. On the one hand, I feel very like desolate about the state of things. On the other hand, I feel like we're resilient. We'll bounce back. Maybe not every business will make it, but hopefully, as many people as possible can survive, period. And we can sort of recoup the other stuff once it's safe to.
Yeah. So first order of business, right? Keep as many people alive as we can. Second order of business.
I would say number one priority, or it should be if you're fair about people.
Second order of business is like, we'll figure out how to keep or bring back movie theaters and concert venues and stuff. Like we'll get to that eventually.
In some ways, the community has been divided. In other ways, it's come together for things like, putting together the pop-up to try to save some businesses, or people becoming more conscious of, hey, like, if I want to buy a thing, I should go to a local store to get it. I should go to a local bookstore. Like, instead of just giving more money to Amazon, like, they're doing fine during a pandemic. Like, we don't need to give more money to them. But I think it's making people, especially me, like, I used Prime all the time back in the day because it was just easy. You're like, great, I need this thing. Great, it's going to be here in a day. The pandemic made you think about exactly what you're saying, which is like, wait, I don't want Gus and Ruby to close. I don't want Shape Street Book to close. I don't want Liar's Bench to close. Like, I want to spend my money in a way to support them. And same thing with, if you do have the means to donate to places that aren't necessarily going to give you anything, like New Hampshire Theater Project, or at least right now, they can't give you a show in person. Same thing, donate to those causes that you want to survive, because right now I think a lot of those organizations are in survival mode, and if we can come together as a community, then maybe they'll be there when this is all over. Knocked on wood.
This next song is a new song. I don't know, I think it might be a Riley kind of song, but I just wrote it, so wanted to play it.
All right, so that was today's episode. Thank you for listening. Next up is a conversation with Catherine Stewart and Genevieve Aishel, friends of the show, from the New Hampshire Theater Project. We talked about the New Hampshire Theater Project's coronavirus summer and what they're doing now, where they're headed next. I think it's going to be a good listen for anybody who is creative, has struggled with being creative during coronavirus, or maybe hasn't struggled and is kind of wondering, how is it that I was able to keep doing this when other people were having such a hard time? That's a question I've certainly asked myself as well. So yeah, that'll be along shortly. Trying to get a couple episodes out before the election. Win, lose, or draw, we're going to be waking up in a different world. So, stay safe, wear a mask, vote if you're in the United States, and listen to Relative Isolation on streaming platforms everywhere.